The Dynasty Warriors series has been running for over 20 years now. Other than the first entry, which was a weapons-based one-on-one fighter, they are action-based hack and slash games which were designed to be a more action-oriented spin-off to the turn-based strategy series Romance of the Three Kingdoms, which itself is very loosely based on the records of the Three Kingdom historical text, covering the late Han Dynasty era and the Three Kingdoms period from Chinese history. The Switch received the crossover game Warriors Orochi 4 earlier this year, but this will be the first of the main series to hit the console. Is it worth picking up? I'm Glenn for SwitchUp, thank you to Koei Tecmo for the review copy, and now, let's find out. Dynasty Warriors 8 was originally released in 2013 for the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360, with the Xtreme Legends edition, which included new expansions such as additional story elements and new characters, releasing the following year. This Xtreme Legends version is now available on the Nintendo Switch. The game revolves around hack and slash action and is based on real historical figures of the era. The bulk of your playtime will be spent in story mode, a vast and expansive mode that sees you playing as a huge variety of characters from different factions. The story takes the aforementioned historical text and tells its own tale with it using real historical characters. You will switch between these characters and the factions as the story progresses, allowing you to experience how the story unfolds from a number of perspectives. At the start of each new area, you will take charge of your general and you will be given an objective to complete. This objective will see you traversing the map, battling hordes and hordes of enemies at a time, and claiming each stronghold for your faction as you go. Within the map, there will be non-playable allies for you to assist, as well as enemy generals that will need to be defeated. Objectives will be updated as you go along, and some of these objectives may change depending on which of the available characters you choose to play as. This will, of course, sound very familiar to anyone who has played a Warriors game before. Each character has two weapons available to them, and you can switch between these on the fly with a press of the R button. This mechanic is actually very important, as switching to your secondary weapon at the end of a combo will enable you to further extend the combo, thereby inflicting more damage against enemy generals. Speaking of powerful moves, the Musou moves are present and correct as you would expect. These are powered by the Musou meter located under your health bar, and a press of the A button will unleash a powerful and unique attack for each of the characters. Ultimately, these will be available to be performed whilst on ground or in the air, and they are very useful for clearing your path when you have been swarmed by enemies, which will happen frequently. You also have Rage Mode, which I believe was new to Dynasty Warriors 8, although there was a similar Musou Rage Mode in a previous entry. When your Rage meter is full, clicking in the right stick will see you enter Rage Mode. Your stats will increase while in this mode, making you extremely powerful, and your Musou meter will merge into one longer bar, enabling you to perform a rage attack by holding down the A button, with the attack ending when you release the A button or when your meter is empty, whichever one comes first. In terms of more standard attacks, pressing Y will see you perform a light attack, whereas pressing the X button performs a heavy attack. Using a variety of these will allow you to string combos together. Your character's weapons will each have an affinity associated to them, being Heavens, Earth and Man. These affinities act in a rock paper scissors style, with Man being more effective against Heaven, Heaven more effective against Earth, and Earth more effective against Man. Coming up against a general whose weapon is infused with an affinity which is weak to that of yours will see an opportunity to engage them in Storm Rush mode. This is signified by a blue symbol above the general's head and will result in a multi-hit attack being performed. Conversely, meeting a general whose weapon affinity beats yours will call for a switch counter move having to be performed. Pressing the R button to switch your weapon just as the enemy is about to strike will break their defense and give you the upper hand. These little tactical nuances elevate the game above its, at times, unfair reputation of being just a mindless hack and slash game. Playing the game in anything above easy mode will see a necessity in mastering, or at least becoming competent in these additional moves. To add a further level of complexity, you are also able to temper and reforge weapons in order to upgrade them, adding elements to them in the process. The weapon materials that enable you to do this can be acquired by dismantling the various weapons that you will acquire as you play, but these can also be found in the other gameplay modes, free play and ambition mode. More on those in a minute. Finally, there are the X attacks, a powerful follow-up attack specific to a particular weapon type. As mentioned briefly above, as well as the story mode, there are free play mode and ambition mode. Free play mode allows you to pick from any of the scenarios and characters already unlocked, as well as choose a faction and undertake these levels in a slightly different way. Ambition mode, however, sees you trying to build a village that is worthy of a visit from the Emperor Xian. In order for this to happen, you must raise the village's status. You partake in battles in much the same way that you do in the other modes, but this time any spoils of war that you claim can be used to upgrade the village, which will then see new residents set up shops, increasing the aforementioned status of your village. I'll be honest, I haven't put much time into this particular mode yet, but it seems an interesting concept. To round things off, there is also a challenge mode available. This definitive edition adds new story quests centering around the character of Lu Bu, as well as including all of the various game expansions, which increases the number of weapons, costumes and characters in the game. The number of characters for this version now stands at 83. On top of all this, there is also a local 2-player split screen mode, and this works very well and adds a great deal of longevity to what is already a feature-packed game. Gameplay is fun, with the difficulty options allowing you to make it a simple hack and slash or a more complex game of timing and countering. By its very nature, it does have the capacity to become a little repetitive, but the story is split into scenarios that are of a decent length in that they always seem to end at just about the right time, allowing you to pick things up again at another time. Controls are smooth, responsive and importantly not too overwhelming considering the vast amount of mechanics at your disposal. Gameplay receives 17 out of 20. And the controls receive 15 out of 20. When it comes to the graphics, the game has a lot going for it. Cutscenes look great, and it really is extremely impressive when you consider just how much detail and attention has gone into creating a huge roster of characters that all feel different and have been individualised to a very satisfying extent. This extends to the personal animations for each character's Musou moves, and although some of the character models show a few rough edges when displayed up close and personal during these cutscenes, it's still a very impressive feat. In terms of performance, I'll be the first to admit that I'm not someone who is particularly adept at estimating frames per second with the naked eye, but I can report that there is very little slowdown while playing in both docked and handheld mode. In fact, it's important to say that handheld mode runs surprisingly well. There was a bit of pop-up, particularly with enemy soldiers suddenly appearing out of nowhere, and some of the textures can look a little flat, but this is nothing that will detract from the gameplay at all. The settings are all suitable for the time period being portrayed and all do the job of building the world around you to immerse you in the game and increase that feeling of escapism that is so essential. One minor gripe was how small the cursor was on the map to show your current location. It blends in quite easily with the red and the blue markers which show each army's position, making it quite easy to lose where you are when planning your route. The map can be enlarged by pressing the ZR button, but then you lose the whole scope of the battlefield, but if all else fails, pausing the game shows you the full map for you to peruse. Some may not even have this issue, and I do suffer from colour blindness which may have also affected me, but I do feel it's worth mentioning nonetheless. Finally, there is a gallery mode included, allowing you to get a closer look at all of the character models, and the visuals receive 14 out of 20. Audio is the very definition of high-octane action.
Allow me to show you how I feel.
It manages to encapsulate the grandiose nature of the battle in musical form without falling too far into cheesy territory. Voice acting is in English by default, although there is the option to change this to the Japanese voices should you wish. While the traditionalist in me loves the Japanese voices, having these on makes it difficult to keep track of your next objective, as the text that accompanies the voice acting can be a little difficult to catch when in the midst of a battle. Audio receives 14 out of 20. Dynasty Warriors 8 costs £34.99 or $39.99, and whilst on the one hand you could argue that this is a pretty high price point for a game that has been out for a few years on other systems, the complete edition has been out on the PS4 and the Vita since 2014 for example, it's also undeniable just how much content the game manages to include. The story mode alone will take tens of hours, plus the various other game modes mentioned and the 2-player mode could easily see this push you into the hundreds of hours bracket. You also need to factor in the encyclopedia mode, which gives an impressive look at the history of the Three Kingdoms and the battles that ensued. Dynasty Warriors is also priced competitively lower than the Warriors Orochi game that is already available on the Switch, by some $20 in fact, and whilst I haven't played that particular game, Mark reviewed that one for us, it's worth making the comparison for people wanting to know their options when looking for some hack and slash action on their Switch. The sheer amount of content justifies the higher price, and value receives 17 out of 20. To conclude, Dynasty Warriors 8 Xtreme Legends Definitive Edition is a fun and feature-packed hack and slash game that has held up very well despite its age. It joins a growing roster of similar games already on the Switch, such as the Hyrule and Fire Emblem Warrior games, the aforementioned Warriors Orochi 4, as well as other games such as Knights of Azure 2. It has a little more complexity than it is possibly given credit for in some quarters, although you will need to play on a difficulty level higher than easy mode to discover it, and if you have the stamina for its repetitive nature, it could keep you entertained for quite some time. Dynasty Warriors 8 Xtreme Legends Definitive Edition receives a SwitchUp score of 77%. Many thanks as always for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please remember to leave a like if you did like what you've just seen, and consider subscribing for all things Switch all the time if you haven't done so already. Wishing you all a very happy new year. Happy gaming.